Hey, I'm Art Matheny. I'm the lead pastor there at the church at Dundee Covenant Church. If you don't know me, this is my dad, Jerry Matheny, and we are on what would we call this? A man excursion, an adventure of men. And we're going today. I'd gone to the NFL Hall of Fame and looking to go to another museum possibly. And so, anyways, as we're playing, go back to all the days of football and remember all the players that we used to love. I got a chance to take some pictures beside some of my favorite players. I remember Cortez Kennedy that played for the Seahawks, whoop, whoop, and I got to see Steve Largent, who was my childhood kind of idol as far as football. I loved him. I loved watching. Dad members watching me playing. I loved watching him playing all the time. I loved it. And you got to see some Dallas Cowboy people and just
Mark had plenty of time to take two pictures. One with Cortez Kennedy. On the other hand, since there are so many Dallas Cowboys in the Hall of Fame, I need to have neither the time nor the film to do it. But again, I was glad that Art was able to take pictures with the two people in the Hall of Fame.
Okay. Well, there's two in the Hall of Fame from Seattle. There's, I don't know, 50,000 from Dallas, but okay, whatever. But anyways, hey, but today, Sunday, where you're at, we're going to be talking through the book of Psalms for the summer, and Psalm 77 is one of those psalms that has a lot to do with memory, and so do museums. So we've been doing some things, seeing some sights at some museums, bringing back memories from the past, and this psalm has a lot to do with remembering what God's done in the past that brings us through times of despair. I'm here at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and again, another museum, and we're talking about Psalm 77, and it's kind of funny because the beginning of it says, I cried out, I screamed out all day long, and actually my dad and I were talking about who the greatest screamers were from rock and roll history. There's James Brown and some other ones that they start screaming at the top of their lungs. I know that screaming or crying out is something that in rock and roll you can find it, whether it's some punk stuff that's been going on the last probably couple of decades or anything else. But within the text, within the scriptures, that those words in the first part of Psalm 77, it says I cried out, screamed, I'm just yelling out all day long is what it's saying. And that the words actually are more of a deeper groan, a crying out. And so that's actually why I think it's kind of cool that we're here today, because we're thinking about the deep groans. I think sometimes that's why music connects to us so deeply in the soul, is because it sometimes feels like what's being cried out, what's being said, even if it's a groan or a scream, connects deeply to where you're at. Maybe you have a song or two at a point in your life where you connected deeply with it. I think that's what's going on here. And this person, as they're crying out to God in this deep way, like a song that connects deep to our soul, gives us words, gives us direction to know where to go and cry out to. I hope that as we read the text and we dig into the text, you know that this deep crying out that we often like in music is actually the very place that this psalm comes from. And hopefully as you read this psalm, maybe in a season of your life, it will speak and give you words that you had for nothing else. I cried out to the Lord. I cried out to the Lord. I yelled at the top of my lungs is one translation. And I wonder, as we get close to this text, if God has things to say to you today. It's 4 a.m. And this is the time, usually, in the day, at least in the morning, when those questions arise, the darker questions. The text says that after crying out, that he doesn't feel comforted by God. Quite actually opposite, as he starts thinking about and remembering the way things used to be, his spirit gets worse. It groans, it says. The text says he muses in his spirit, and it doesn't help. And he's feeling in deep distress. Maybe this has never happened to you, but I think for most of you it has. And I think many of you don't think that it's okay to be able to speak to God or even have some of the thoughts or feelings that this text opens up for us. It is. The psalmist gives us ways and words to praise and words to pray rightly to God. And as I look at this text, and as I'm in conversation with people that have struggled and have been in distress before, they found this to be a great help. Just spoke to a close friend. We deeply respect her and love her. Had just previously gone through a divorce recently. We'll call her Haley. And Haley, as I sat with her and talked even about this passage, Psalm 77, with her, she could acknowledge that this psalm does speak to the distress and the questions that arise with God in those deep, dark places. The text leads us to think that the psalmist couldn't go to sleep. He's up at 4 o'clock like I am. He's stressed. His eyes won't open up. His eyes are open. They won't close, it says. It says that his soul will not be comforted by anything less. That he's just stirred up and in distress and confusion, and he's there. And these questions arise to God in this dark, quiet place. These questions that may not feel like they're able to be asked very often. These questions, beginning I think in verse 7, are some of the questions that speak about the goodness of God. God, in all these things, are you good? Are you? Maybe you, too, have asked these questions. They ask these things of God. God, will you forsake me or reject me? God, will you fail me? Are you going to vanish? Is the rug going to be pulled out from underneath me? And are you going to forsake me? I've heard of this hesed love, this unconditional, persevering, unwavering love of yours, God. But right now, it is not gelling. It's not measuring up and meshing with the experience that I'm having right now, God. And so is this an okay question, or this an okay conversation we can be having, God? Yes, it is. There's questions that arise out of the distress and the confusion that this psalmist has. And you too may have or have had times, or may have times in the future, where this speaks directly to your soul. Just look at those questions, and I would like you to kind of put your noses down and read again. I'm going to pause. I'm going to let you read those questions. And in your own spirit, I want you to talk to God right now where we're at. And I want you to ask him, ask him to bring you to a place of remembering when you've asked these questions, if you have, or maybe the occasion around them that brought you to ask these questions. And we'll come back in a moment to see how the psalmist is dealing with this distress within it.
Where is the moment we needed the most? You kick up the leaves and the magic is lost. And tell me your blue skies fade to gray, and tell me your passion's gone away, and I don't need no carrying on.
Detroit. It reminds me of maybe how the people of Israel, as they felt backed up against a body of water, might have felt. The part in the psalm that we're in right now, in Psalm 77, is the turning point of the psalm. It says, remember. This is the third time in the passage it says remember, but this time it's not remember the circumstances that surround you, it's remember back. Remember how God's been faithful. That's what this remember in this part of the passage is talking about. Remember back when God was good. You may have wondered why I've had some video clips in front of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and in front of the Football Hall of Fame back in Cleveland, but the reason behind that is museums are built for us to remember, because we forget so quickly. And I don't know about the museum of your own soul, but I hope that you have stories stored up in there of God's faithfulness. The psalmist needed that, because in the midst of despair, the transfer and the movement from despair to a place of encouragement, of a renewed hope, comes not from God delivering him or meeting him in that situation necessarily. See, they had the blinders of the circumstances on. He couldn't remember everything, just what was the circumstances in that moment. But when the blinders were taken off and he was able to remember not only the circumstances he was in, but also the circumstances, the way God has met them in the past, when that happened, that remember became powerful. And just like a museum brings back memory so that it packs our moment, this too, this remember in the passage draws us there. It continues on, and he doesn't even get general. He begins to start speaking about how God is awesome and his mighty displays of work, but then he gets very specific, and this is super important when it comes to, I think, at times of despair, that we go back and remember times when God has been faithful, really faithful, when we remember what God has done and how his character that was challenged earlier with the questions, are you going to fail me? Are you going to forget me, God? Those questions that come out of that deep pain, those questions are answered in the character of God as he's shown himself in the past and will show himself in the future. One of the favorite parts of this is when he goes back and he tells the story of the Exodus story, much like being pressed up against the body of water and no place to go. That's where the Israelites were. But what happens is God met them there and opened a way. He opens ways for us. He does. If we will wait, if you look at the passage in Exodus chapter 14, he says, be still and let me fight for you. Just watch. And oftentimes we need to wait long enough to see God do that in our lives. And when he does that, he opens that up. The beauty is this. There is deliverance and there is protection and justice that happens in that. But the amazing thing is this. I love the line at the very end that says, though you parted the waters, your footsteps were not seen. I think you and I live most of the time in a place where we are unaware of the way God is working. And most of the time, only in hindsight can we look back and see the invisible steps of God. Those traces. It was the way through the sea was the way of God in that situation. But it was unseen. We couldn't tangibly see God that moment, only his actions. And much like the wind, only seeing the effects of the wind, that's what brings us hope. Moving from this place of crying out and being in deep despair with the deep questions of God, God, are you good? But bringing back memory that guides us forward. This Psalm 77 is a real lament psalm, beginning in the place of praising, but also deep in the depths of hurt and pain and despair, but brings us back through the way of remembering. My question as I leave today, and leave for you as you sing a response song, is this. Could there be a place that God is leaving footprints for you now in your life and your circumstance? Could there be a place that God right now might be actively there, but you can't see him, and his invisible footsteps, just like leading through the Exodus, are left as traces of his goodness that will carry you and me through the super hard times of our lives?